Okay, so today we are going to look at if-then statements and while loops. So first thing we'll need to do is close out of this and open up Vex Robotics. Alright, once it's done loading, we're going to close out of RobotC's news thing and click New File. Then, as always, we're going to click File, Save As. And we're going to name today's while loop. Now, click save. Make sure that you save it under your H drive. Should be a symbol that looks something like this, but it'll have your username on it. So save it wherever you need to save it. I'm going to save this one on my desktop. Alright, first thing that we're going to do is configure our ports. Alright. So we're going to go to motor and sensor setup. We're going to go to digital sensors because we're only going to be using digital sensors today. And we're going to configure them. So digital 1 we're going to configure as green. That's a Vex LED. Digital 2 we're going to name red. That's also a Vex LED. And digital 3 doesn't have anything on it. Digital 4 should have a limit switch, and all switches and bumpers are touch sensors. So a limit switch and a bumper switch, or a button even, is just a touch sensor. It's something that you touch in and it connects a physical circuit. Let's see here. On port 5 we're going to have a bump switch, and that is also a touch sensor. So those should be our 4 ports that we're going to have today. We're going to click apply and OK. We're going to make sure, we're going to look up here, check our spellings, and make sure that they're all lowercase, so we know that we're going to use all lowercase from here on out. Alright, so now inside of task main we are going to start our program. But before we do that, just so we know that it's our program, up above task main we're going to put our name and today's date. So today is 3-4-19. Be careful with those dashes. If you accidentally double slash, you can cause yourself some trouble. Alright, so we're in task main. First thing we're going to do is we're going to actually declare our first variable. Alright, so it's going to be an integer, and it's going to be choice, and we're going to make it equal 0. Alright, so that's our very first, and it's already upset with us. Oh, it has no read reference, so that means that it's not being used yet, but that's okay because we're going to use it in the future. Alright, under that, well, actually beside it, let's use our comments. Let's comment out, and what we're really doing is we're creating a variable and we are setting it to 0. So the default is 0. So we've made a variable, it's an integer called choice, and we've defaulted it to 0. So that means at the beginning of our code, it'll make the variable, it puts 0 in there, and that's so we know what it starts out as. It's kind of our starting point. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off our LEDs by default. So we're going to turn off red, and we're going to turn off green. So red, and I'm lazy, so Control C, Control V, turn off, and green. We've just turned off both of our LEDs. Alright, so now it's time for our very first while loop, and it's the most common while loop used. It's while 1 equals 1, and then we're going to add a bracket here, and we're going to come down here, we're going to give ourselves some space and another bracket. Alright, so everything in code is done between brackets. So our main task is up here. It's between this bracket, and you can see the brackets are opposite brackets. They close in each other. This is our while loop, and we're saying, hey, while 1 equals 1. Well, 1 always equals 1. So it's going to loop through here. It's going to start at the top, and it's going to work its way down the code, and when it hits the bottom, it's going to go all the way back up to the top, and it's going to do that as long as 1 equals 1. And 1 always equals 1, so it will loop forever. So we'll just say loops forever. All right. Now, our next thing we're going to do is our first if statement. So we're going to say if, we're going to do a parentheses, and then we're going to say sensor value. All right. You have to be really, really careful with this one. It has to be properly typed, as in a capital S and a capital V. And our sensor value, the sensor we're going to look at, is going to be limit switch. And I like to just copy it straight from here when it lets me. If I copy it from here, I know that I've named it correctly. All right, so limit switch when it equal 1. And then we close our parentheses. So what we're really saying is hey, when limit switch equal 1. And as you remember from when we did binary, 1 is on. So it means, hey, when the limit switch, when it's pressed, do whatever is under it in the brackets. So we're going to add 2 brackets. So we're saying, hey, if you press this button, the limit switch, and it equals 1. And the reason we use equal is if we just used equal, you'd be telling it, hey, the limit switch is being pressed right now. But what we're really saying is check to see if it equals 1. See if it's being pressed right now. And when it's 1, we're going to say choice equals 1. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, when you press the limit switch in, choice is going to equal 1. So choice up here is our variable that we made, and we're going to use that later. All right. Now, the great thing about code is that you can copy just about anything. And we're going to start here. We're going to copy this part of our code, and we're going to switch it from limit switch to bump switch. So bump switch when it equals 1. So whenever the push button on your test bench is pressed in, choice is going to equal 2. All right. So what we've done is we've used an if statement. We said, hey, if you press in this button, make choice equal 1. If you press in this button, make choice equal 2. All right. So now it's time for some actual code that's going to control something. So the first part right here is all about inputs. Now we're going to worry about outputs. So if choice, if I can spell choice, equal 1, so we're checking to see if choice equals 1. If it does, we're going to do what's inside the brackets. So we're going to turn off the red LED and on the green LED. So we can steal this up here for that, because we're going to turn off the red, turn off red, and turn on parentheses green, parentheses, close bracket. All right, so we're saying, hey, if they've pressed in the limit switch and choice equals 1, if choice equals 1, we're going to turn off the red, turn on the green. Easy enough. And since I'm still very, very lazy, we're going to copy this code right here. Copy. And I like to use Control V. We're going to paste it in there. We're going to say, hey, if choice is 2, and we're just going to swap the words green and red. So now we're saying, hey, if they press in the bump switch, we're going to turn off green and turn on red. So they're opposite. So when you press in the limit switch, one light's going to turn on. When you press in the bumper switch, the other light's going to turn on. So it's going to do lights back and forth for how you press the button, how your choice is. Alright, so now let's fix our format. And this is the great thing about the fixed formatting tool, is you can use it to check your brackets. So I've got a bracket here and a bracket here. I've got my while loop bracket, which is here to here. Then my ifs are all nicely bracketed together. Everything should be all good. So we're going to compile the program, and we've got an error. So we're going to take a look at what the error is. Code generation not performed, errors during compilation. And if we read here, it says warning, assignment equal embedded in expression. And here's where my problem is. While 1 equal 1, as we talked about here, that would make 1 equal 1, which we can't make 1 equal 1 because 1 always equals 1. This should have been equal because it's checking to see the value. So it's saying, hey, if 1 equals 1. That's a little bit different. Alright, so now let's see if our code works. So the code works. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you're ready to program it. And like always, we're going to go to our robot, check our platform. So VEX 2.0 Cortex, 2.0 Cortex, and natural language. You would compile the program. If it's good, you download that to the robot. If you have problems downloading it to the robot, always check and do a firmware download, but that shouldn't be a problem. Alright, so now that you've done this, we're going to switch it up a bit. So what I want you to do is, I want you to write it in a way where it's the exact same code, except for when the choice is 0, I want both lights on. So we're going to do the same code again, very similar, but you're going to add a bit where if choice equals 0, you're going to turn both lights on. Alright, hope you are able to figure out if and while loops using this fairly simple code.